couple days, we've been talking about how scientists build and design experiments to answer the questions that they're curious about. We've talked about what makes a good question, how do you build a hypothesis, and now we're going to start talking about some of the components of experimental design. Today we're going to work on independent versus dependent variables, and we're going to work on an example and try identifying them. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about the difference between a control and an experimental group. So first we're going to go over what exactly is an independent variable. An independent variable is going to be the variable in an experiment that we are controlling. This variable is not going to be affected by others, and we are typically going to pretty much preset this prior to the experiment. The dependent variable, on the other hand, is going to be what we are ultimately looking to measure. This variable we're not going to know prior to the experiment, we're going to find out, and we're going to see that it's going to be affected by the other variables. So the dependent variable is going to be affected by the independent variable. A little chant that we can kind of think of in our head when we're trying to figure out a practice problem is to think, independent, that's me, I change it. And then dependent, that's what I measure. Kind of just thinking in your head, independent, that's what I'm going to change, I'm going to control that, or the scientist is going to control that, and the dependent is what I'm going to measure. So independent, that's me, I change it. Dependent, that's what I measure. Now let's do an experiment together. So we've talked a lot about, like what makes a good question, how do you then develop a hypothesis. So I'm going to give you the question, and then we're going to take a couple seconds to kind of think about a hypothesis. We'll share with our neighbors, and then we'll share it to the rest of the class. So first, the question that I'm asking is, does varying light levels affect plant height? That's my question. I want everyone to take 5 seconds. I want you to think of a possible hypothesis. I want you to share with your neighbor, kind of think, is there anything that we could change, any way we can improve the hypothesis we've come up with, and then we're going to share with the rest of the class. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone 5 seconds to think. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Now I want everyone to turn to their partner, preferably someone you haven't talked to already today, and I want you to share your hypothesis. Share your hypothesis, and then I want you to talk about, is there anything that you can improve about your hypothesis? Is there anything that's unclear? Remember, we're going to be doing an if, blah, then, blah. That's the sort of structure we've been using it that we learned yesterday. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gorgeous. Is there 2 people who want to share with us? Okay, so your hypothesis is if the plants get lots of light, then they're going to grow tall. Okay, I want everyone to put one finger up, an appropriate finger that they think, if they think that hypothesis is good as is, or put 2 fingers up if they think there is some way that needs to be modified. Okay, I see lots of ones. Gorgeous. I want another person to share their hypothesis. Okay, so you're saying if the plants get low levels of light, then they're going to be shorter in height. Okay, again, 1 finger, appropriate finger, if you agree that that hypothesis is good as is. 2 fingers if you think that hypothesis needs some modification. Okay, I see lots of ones. Gorgeous. So we've come up with a hypothesis. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the difference between a control and an experimental group. But for now, we're just going to kind of talk about what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable. So in this experiment, we're going to have 3 different pots of plants, and we're going to give them varying light levels. So lots of light, a little bit light, no light. Then we're going to let them grow for a couple weeks, and then at the end, we're going to measure the height. So I want everyone to think for a second. What are we controlling? Are we controlling the amount of light the plant gets, or how tall the plant is? If you think it is light, I want you to put a thumbs up. Who thinks light? Thumbs down. If you think it is height, okay? If you disagree with your neighbor, I want you to talk to your neighbor. Okay, I see lots of thumbs up, so lots of people think it's light. So that means the other one, the dependent variable, is going to be the plant height because we are measuring that. While with the independent variable, we are controlling how much light each plant gets. We know we've already picked this prior to the start of the experiment, and the height of the plant is what we are measuring at the end of the experiment. And that's pretty much it.